Hello, everybody. Glad you could join us for episode number 36 of the Launch and Beyond podcast, a podcast designed to support you not only achieving great success in your business, but also in all other areas of life as well. One of the most common statements to come out of the mouths of ambitious and driven people is their desire to get to the next level, whether it's in their business, with their income, their career, or the level of impact they're having on the world. Wanting to get to the next level, whatever that is for them. But what is it that prevents people from getting to this next level? For many people, it's because they've not fully committed themselves to the process. They've been half-hearted, hoping and wishing they could get what they want and for things to turn out the way they dream without them having to do anything different from what they're doing now. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. As motivational speaker Eric Thomas, known as E.T., the hip-hop preacher, says, "You ain't there because you ain't there." Wanting to get to the next level by continuing to do what you're doing at this level will not get you there. In this podcast episode titled Leveling Up, we're discussing just what it takes to get to the next level. We hope you enjoy it. Good morning, Adam. What a great Melbourne morning it is to be recording our podcast here. It's a bright sunny day in Melbourne. I guess it amplifies the lockdown component that we're still in here in Melbourne. We are still recording from home, but it's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm looking forward to getting out there a little bit later on once the podcast recorded. How are you keeping this morning?
Yeah, not too bad. I've noticed that it's beautiful, sunny out there as well. A little bit windy. Yesterday I was doing a run, and I did one at about 3:30ish, and it was like gale force winds like throwing me around, and I'm like, I was running actually good times, like under 6 minutes, which was the first time for a while that I've run consistently under 6. And then came back and I was exhausted, dripping with sweat, and because it was hot, it was just like the recovery time was just so much longer. And then I was like, oh, stuff this. I went for a second run at like 9:30 at night, and the wind and the heat was still the same. And I'm looking today, I'm going, I really don't want to run today under this wind again, but positive is the sun's out and it's nice, and actually started to get a tan up just one or 2 days in the sun, and this olive skin bounces back quite quickly. So it's been good for the mood.
Yeah, great.
See the sun. What about you? Still keeping up to date? I noticed you finished your 75 hard, and
Yeah. I've gone. I finished the second consecutive one straight, so I've gone straight into the third one. So I'm up to about day 155 straight, and you feel like you need your head read, but to me, it's a really empowering process that I'm loving. I'm loving the clarity that I get from that, and just being able to direct my energy and focus to things that I have control over has been really powerful. So that's the avenue for that. This week for me really was a great week, and both a challenging one as well. I had a lot of great things that I've been working towards manifest and come through, which is fantastic. But by the same token, my a really tough day as well yesterday, where my original coach and mentor, John Hidwood, passed away yesterday.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I guess by virtue, in my own part, I want to dedicate what we're going to talk about today and leveling up to him, because for him, for me, I guess he was the guy who allowed me and supported me to really get clear on this as well. And when we were preparing for this podcast episode, I didn't know John was unwell, and within a back case of a couple of days, he went from one of the most vibrant people that I know to passing away. He had mesothelioma related back to asbestos exposure back in the 70s, and within a day of going into palliative care, he was gone. So I'm really, I was a mess yesterday, and when I realized just how important this person was in fulfilling and seeing a vision in me before I saw it in myself. And I want to dedicate what we talk about today, in my part, to a man who helped me level up. And hopefully people could take the learnings and the messages that come out of today and apply it to their life and level up in whichever area it is that they're looking at. So
I'm sure
I guess
he'll appreciate that.
Yeah, well, like I've loved all our episodes, and in particular the last few weeks, we've had a lot of great guests on. They've been fantastic, and the way that it's been received from our listeners has been sensational. So we're really grateful for that, and that's a format we'll definitely keep coming back to from time to time as we consider who is it that we want on our podcast and who will add value to the listener. So we'll definitely do that, as well as you and I, Adam, and engaging with us as well. So that's one of our sessions today.
Yeah.
It's the Adam and Jim show, and it's great to be able to get back into this format where we create some content, deliver some content, discuss it, and give people some action steps to follow through as well.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, definitely. I remember Jim sent me the notes for this week, and I was like, whoa, we're back to full notes of podcasts, which is good because, I loved having all the guests on. It was so versatile, and, hearing different voices makes it exciting and refreshing. But it's good to get back into some of the content, because I know, especially with me, even listening to Jim, who we host this together, even listening to you, I'm just like, whoa, I'm learning so much right now. So it's good to come back to some actual step-based content.
Yeah. Well, and as I said, I'm standing on the shoulder of giants of the people who saw within me a capacity to be able to do that, and I want to be able to pay it forward. So this is really what the podcast is all about, our legacy and empowering people to do that. So
it's funny because you talk about John, the way that I seem to talk about you is you see more potential in me than I see in myself, and you've coached me and you've pushed me to level up. So I'm fortunate to be able to do a podcast with you all this time. So
thanks, Adam. Just as I'm about to launch into it, you hit me with that, and I'm just trying to keep it all together. So thank you. I'm really grateful for that. So leveling up, right? Why is this important? And I think before I even knew about John being unwell, a lot of the recent conversations I've had with coaching clients in the last few days have really centered around this. It's a few of the clients I've been working with just weren't leaning in to what was required to get to that next level, and that was causing a lot of frustration, confusion, and preventing people from living to their potential. And it's really hard to watch that and see that and feel it's disempowering, and there has to be a point where people take ownership of that and take that step and lean in to level up. And the number one reason that prevents people from doing that is fear. Okay, fear of what is it going to take to get there. So in a lot of situations, a lot of people may already be investing a lot of money, a lot of energy, a lot of effort just to perform at the current level that they are. And the thought of going even more to the next level to stretch them beyond what they can currently do is challenging. It's difficult. There's a point that people are going to say, look, I'm already stretched. How could I possibly get to that level? What more do I need to do? What do I need to take? And because of that, they create a story about why it's not possible and why they're not getting to that place and why can't they achieve that outcome. And either one or two things happens. Either they double down and just work harder and keep doing the same things and getting the same results, or they give up. Have you ever noticed that being the case there, Adam? Either in conversations with other people or just repeating that cycle and pattern?
Yeah, definitely. And again, reading this Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, I reckon everyone should read that book because it was so impactful on my life. And I just finished reading a few weeks ago or a few days ago. And anyway, in one of the last chapters, it talks about 6 types of fear. And it talks about fear of illness, fear of failure, fear of poverty, and all this other stuff. And it comes through. But the second you get fear into your mind, it actually puts that mind into a negative mindset. And what happens there is then people start questioning themselves. As you've outlined, they start questioning themselves, and then they go, is this really the right way? Should it really be this hard? Is it this hard? Am I doing it the right way? Because everyone talks about it being easy. So, you start playing games in your own mind. And I've seen it through friends and starting entrepreneurs in the first 2 or 3 years where people are starting to acclimatize to, everything falls with you. The buck stops with you because you're the director, you're the CEO, you're the boss, you're the guy who pays everything or orders everything. And people don't understand that everything stops with you. So your life is going to step up to that next level and be a bit more difficult
Mm.
but it's going in the right direction. You can't fear that. You got to lean in, embrace it, and move forward. And I've seen it again in the first few years of entrepreneurship. I see this a lot.
Yeah, and without question, it does take uh, a leap of faith to do that. The biggest thing that most people don't do is commit wholeheartedly to the process,
Yeah.
right? And whether it is the fear that you talk about, they just hold back because they're trying to work out a plan B. What if this doesn't work out? So consequently, they're kind of like one foot in either camp, and by subconsciously doing that, you're telling your brain that, look, it's not going to work out. So you might as well have a contingency plan. And when you do that, what while it's appropriate and prudent to have options and possibilities like that are available to you, when you don't fully commit, when you don't fully invest yourself, when you don't fully go all in, you're preventing from getting to that next level. Right? The best example I had as a kid, and there's multiple examples of it, whether it's in soccer or contact sports, but I played soccer, and what coach always used to tell me is that in a 50-50 situation, if you're going in for the ball, if you go in there half-heartedly and the other guy goes in full extent, you're going to break your leg. And so the only way to go in for the ball was being full committed. And it was really amazing how we would go in for the ball and both would walk away pretty much fine. And if someone walked in, came into that scenario half-heartedly, and somebody, okay, they was the ACL, their knee got busted, they broke their leg every time. So that to me reinforced the importance of being intentional and committed no matter what you do when you go in.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of when you're jumping on a trampoline and you try to do a forward flip. And if you're like, actually, I can't do this on land, what makes me think I'm going to do it on a trampoline?
Yeah,
Not factoring all the momentum. And
yeah,
you do like a half-hearted forward flip or whatever, and you fall down on your neck. And even though it's only on a trampoline, the impact's not as big, but you jar yourself up and you're like, oh, that wasn't good. But
yeah,
next time when you're a bit more like of a kid, you do it all the time and all the time and all the time because you're not thinking about consequences. When you get to your teens or your early adulthood, you're just like, oh no, maybe I might actually hurt myself a lot.
yeah,
And then that's
yeah,
when you actually do hurt yourself. It's almost like you've put that idea in your mind and it reenacts in life.
yeah, yeah. And spot on. So we've used a couple of examples specifically related to sports, but it's not just in sports that this applies. It applies in multiple areas of life. Right. So, for example, in relationships, if you go into a relationship less than 100% all in, I mean, what does it say to someone? Imagine you're at the receiving end of a statement that says, "Hey, listen, I really care about you. I'm going to give you 60% of what I've got." Yeah, like even the facial expression. I'm just watching you on camera, and you go, "Oh man, that's exactly right. That's
60, yeah, all
yeah,
right, cool.
energetically. All right, look, I'll give you 65." So
Yeah.
that protection, that not being prepared to go all in to level up, you never quite reach the highs of what's possible from a connection point of view. And so this is what it's about. Yes, the people fear being hurt, so consequently they hold back, and that's what that reserve's about. But leveling up can't just happen in one area in your life. You can't just selectively go, okay, I'm going to level up here and then I'm going to hold back everywhere else. I think the people who I see express life and its richness, and my mentor and coach John was exactly like that. He was the same everywhere. He knew everybody by name. He would greet them, hug and kiss them, no matter what. And he was exactly the same with everybody. And that to me was congruence around all areas. And so that's why the legacy this guy has and has had throughout the world ripples throughout the world. There are people throughout the world that are mourning his passing because he was so instrumental in doing that. Why? Because he leveled up in all areas of life. So I think it's an important consideration. And the old saying, how we do one thing is how we do all things.
Yeah.
Leveling up is a way of life, is a way of going about things that you can't turn on and off in different areas of life. So your thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, the as you always say, like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And
Hmm.
if you're leveling up one part of your life, you see this with sports stars a lot. They'll excel really highly in sport, but then their relationship suffers, and then they crumble down as a person, and then it reflects in the media and all this stuff. So if you don't make it consistent over all levels, eventually it'll all catch up to you, and you'll fracture, and then you'll break down. So
Mm.
if you level up in all areas, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to excel in sports, but I'm also going to excel in my relationship and being a father. Like our previous guest, Sal Frizella, he's a great example of this. You know, you can see he dominates his workplace, but his family life, he spends as much time with his family as he does with his work family. And that
Yeah.
was a conscious effort to go, I'm leveling up everything. And we heard with his schedule, he's got morning time's him. Then 8 o'clock he goes to be dad. 9 o'clock is in the office. 5:30 he's home
Yeah.
for being dad again. Then he's being husband, and he's leveling up all parts of his life.
Yeah. So it is. It's transferable to multiple areas. So you mentioned about Sal and going into as part of a team. Well, as all members of your team, you want them all to be all in, right?
Yeah,
As well. Why? Because you're relying on somebody else executing at the highest level, because that'll have an impact directly or indirectly on what you do. And consequently, if someone's half-hearted about that, you can feel it, you can see it. Like I played a lot of sport as a kid, and I used to get frustrated where I would much rather get thumped every week, knowing everybody was doing the best they could, rather than people dogging it or half-heartedly just not putting effort in. That used to annoy the crap out of me. I used to get really frustrated. So, we'd be playing junior sport at a high level, and we were entering the age where people were going out, and I get it. I love socializing as well too, but when it was affecting me, that used to annoy me. So if someone's a really great player, but they're drunk or stoned, and they're rocking up and playing on my team and affecting how that used to drive me crazy. So in the end, I just went, I'm out. I'm not going to waste my time, energy, and effort being committed to this when you're not giving it the courtesy that it was. So that's just me. That was the intensity of me coming through. But even at that level and age, it was like, man, I'm in or I'm out. I can't do this half thing. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not.
yeah.
That's the way I see it, black and white in that regard.
Well, I level up my partying to make sure that it's consistent with the rest of my life. You
Well,
can't
that's
neglect
good.
one part of your life. The
Yeah.
partying has to level up as well.
Yeah.
But one thing I've always said is, if it affects my work life,
Yeah.
then I'll stop it straight away.
Yeah.
And to this point, it doesn't. But most of this year, I've been on 75 hard now for,
Yeah.
what is it? I don't know, 5 months of this year. So
Yeah.
it hasn't affected me so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
But you've got to draw that line.
Yeah. Look, and I'm the guy who will call it out, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why that's the case. I'm really, really clear in myself. Like, so that's not it's not a judgment or a righteous call. It's just a case of I support people to do that, and we joke about it, and I'll never make comment on how someone runs their life. If it's affecting me and the way that I'm working on that, then that's when I'll come back and go, hey, dude, look, you dropped the ball, or this is affecting this. I either need to sort it out or I'm out, because and that's how I do it. So it's a high standard. That it's funny because my coach John was exactly the same. He had the highest standard possible, and I had 5 a.m. coaching calls with him for ages, for years. And people would go, who's crazy enough to have 5 a.m. coach calls? And he just says, only the people who are committed to high levels of success.
Yeah.
And I taught that, like you get what you expect. And he set a high standard, and I never actually ever had to be called out, because I could meet that standard. And that was, to me, how I transferred in other areas. So that as a rigid model may not work for everybody, and I get that. But we're talking about leveling up here. And in order to level up, there are going to be comforts, things that you don't feel like you want to do. You're just going to have to let go of, if the prize and the outcome is much bigger than the short-term discomfort. And I was prepared to pay the price. So that's what it took for me in that regard. So,
Well, I was pushing all my workouts a bit later this week because the sun's out, curfew is not there. So I'm sitting there sending text messages and messages to Jim at like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I'm getting responses at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, who's even up at this time?
that nut job.
But now I understand, it's sort of been inbuilt, and it's your way of leveling up. So
Look,
yeah.
And that's what it is. And that's what 75 Hard has done for me. It's created the structure that has worked for me. I'm happier, I'm busier than I've ever been in my whole life.
Mm.
I'm running 3 companies now, and I'm busier than I've ever been. And I have to execute, and I have to be, and I'm committed to every one of them. And the podcast there. So I was talking to somebody else, one of my advisors, one of my mentors and coaches. I've got a spiritual coach, right? And a lot of people don't talk about that, but I've got a spiritual coach who keeps me connected to purpose and spirituality and all those things. And I was talking to her during the week, and I said, like, in high performance, we need to focus on the one thing, right? And LeBron James, I saw an article with him recently where he said that the one thing for him is basketball, is because it's because of that one thing that allows all the other great things to happen. And so I was really sitting with that. I was just there thinking about the power of distraction and multiple avenues. And the podcast, I love doing the podcast. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time because we don't just wing it. There's a lot of preparation because we respect our audience. So we put the effort into it. And I love doing that. I love the impact that it's having on the community, and the impact that we're getting is huge, right? And the effect, and so I'm loving that. And then there's the ventures, and I sat with this and I went, I actually don't want to, none of them are areas I want to let go of. And it's not an ego thing. It's like every part of my world is fulfilled when I'm doing that. And so this was a case of the conclusion we got to is you just got to get better. You just got to get committed to priority and systemization and systems, so that you can operate at those levels. Because if they're important to you, you got to be committed. And committed for you doesn't mean working harder. It just means you got to be committed to your systems. You've got to be committed to your delegation if you're going to operate at that level. And I got to that point going, I love that, because I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to operate at a high level. And that means I've got to be leveling up in all areas.
Yep.
So that was a big realization that I had, was my spiritual growth is fulfilled when I'm doing all parts of those. So leveling up for me is using 75 Hard to stay within the lane and stay within disciplines that allows me to do all that. So that's the realization that I got to.
Yeah, well, Jocko, he talks about, I've got the quote in front of me, it's sitting in my office, so I'm going to read it. Discipline might appear to be the opposite of freedom, but in fact, discipline is the path to freedom.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is leveling up, but you're scheduling your structures better.
Yeah.
Which ultimately leads you to feeling more free, because you're more fulfilled in your whole life. So you don't feel like it's a burden anymore, because you've actually structured everything. You're fitting everything in, and now it doesn't feel like a chore.
Yeah.
It feels fulfilling and successful, and not monetarily successful, just successful in your purpose.
Yeah. Well, I'm fitting in the things that are most important in, because there's a lot of things that I don't get done, but they're not my highest priority things. So they'd be like nice things to do. What I've dedicated a lot of my focus and work on is to go, what are the big rocks in my life? What are the things that I don't want to drop? I can't afford to drop any one of those, because I may not read the paper today, but I've connected with my wife and kids. Or I may not watch a TV show, but I've exercised, I've honored myself, and I've honored my nutrition. So they're to me, they're the leveling up capacities that I'm talking about. And you quoted Jocko Willink, which is fantastic, and I love that discipline is freedom avenue. There's a quote that I want to share as well. I'm gonna read it out here, because it's influenced so much of my life and so much of my world. And it's from an 18th century German writer and statesman called Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And his famous quote is about commitment. Now, quote is such: until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. The moment that one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings, and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come this way. Whatever you do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. So what I take out of that quote is Goethe says that when you are fully committed, when you're all in, things start to move, things start to happen, and you may not have even anticipated what they could be. You're gonna be opened up to possibilities and opportunities that you wouldn't have seen because you weren't all in. And I've seen that be the case. You know, when you see someone who's fully committed into something, they make stuff happen they previously didn't, because there's an energy about them, there's a vibration about them, there's an enthusiasm and intention that's magnetic, that draws people to you, and that's really what that's about. So there's elements of what you said with, you know, we're comparing two great philosophers, Jocko and Goethe. The theme here is fundamentally the same. When the discipline gives you the freedom, and the discipline of being fully committed creates situations and opportunities that you may not have otherwise seen.
Well, it's funny when you talk about the commitments. I've seen it through so many, like, again, constantly referring to 75 hard, but through other fitness challenges, when I'm on the 8-week challenge or when I'm on the 12-week challenge, I'm fully committed and I'm in. But the second I come off, I'm just like, you know, it doesn't matter. I'll miss the diet today, or I'll miss that workout today. It's not going to affect anything. But when I'm in, I'm committed. You're right. You feel a different vibration. You move a different way. You've got a different aura. You keep going and pushing to levels that you didn't think was possible. But that's because you're on the challenge. You're in the parameters. You have to keep moving forward. Otherwise, you're going to go back. And on an 8-week challenge, a 6-week challenge, a 12-week challenge, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be 75 hard. If you miss one of those days, your end result's not going to be the best result that you could have had. And then you'll kick yourself. And that's what leveling up is constantly every day turning up and being your best self to ultimately get the best result at the end of that 6, 8, 12-week period, whatever it's going to be. And that leads to discipline and commitment, as you said, with what was his name? Wolfgang.
Yeah, Goethe.
Yeah.
Goethe.
Yeah. Wolfgang von Goethe.
Yeah.
I like how you got the little brackets of the pronunciation, because
Well,
I was like, Goethe.
Because most people see Goethe and from a pronunciation and call it Goethe, and it's right. But if you're going to quote a guy, get his name right. So that's why, to me, it's really important that we honor where we get our inspiration. And to me, that I've read that quote so many times, and it comes back to the elementary truth that the moment you're committed, things start happening. Providence, you know, basically situations open up, and they'd be like 3 key things that I'd like people to take out of what we've spoken about already. And that is number one. When you fully commit to a situation, you may not have all the options and possibilities and things available to you, but you're going to tap into a level of resourcefulness because of your commitment that you may not have had open or available to you up until this point in time. So that ability to be fully committed opens up options. All right. So that's point one. Point two is in those scenarios, and there's a you know, my background is in chiropractic. There's a guy called Jim Parker who used one of these success principles, and he'd basically say, number two, that you'll attract the people, places, things, opportunities, and situations to support you that you wouldn't have had up until that point where you were fully committed. Right. So that's point two. And mentioned earlier on, the intention of vibration that you put out as a result of that does one of two things. It lasers your mind and brain to find solutions, and it draws people to you as well. So it's really fascinating that you can see someone who's fully committed, and you can see someone who's going through the motions. And there's a big distinction between those. And so, you know, bringing it back to Eric Thomas, who we talked about, you ain't there because you ain't there. And a lot of the times when you act as if you are at that place and act from that place, that's what you'll create. That's how you get that outcome.
Well, one of the main things I've noticed from ET and also Les Brown was they are phenomenal speakers.
They're two of my favorite speakers, those two guys. Yeah.
I love Les Brown. His humor is so funny. The way he can tell a story is amazing. But both of them were struggling with weight. and both are very open about it. And they go, how can I teach motivation if my body doesn't look a certain way? And that was leveling up all parts of their life. They are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak at different events around the world, and they're looking like they're not successful. So
Mm.
what did they do? Eric Thomas, first thing in the morning, he wakes up 3 o'clock, 3:30, goes
Yeah.
for a 2-mile run on the treadmill, whichever hotel is in around the world. He goes and he commits to that because he's leveling up. And I don't want to be judgmental with people because there's always other factors that you don't know. But generally, your body looks like how your mind feels.
Mm.
And if you're feeling fit, your body looks fit. That doesn't mean you have to be, super skinny. But if you're walking around with a good posture and you look like you're breathing well and everything, your mindset looks the same. And you talk about it in vibrations. That's the physical version
Yeah.
of what I notice in a vibration is the fact that you've got your shoulders back, your posture's up, you're breathing well, you're looking fit. And that doesn't mean you have to have no belly or anything. I'm not judging you on that point. It's your demeanor, your vibrations. It's a physical reminder of the vibrations. And to see two of the biggest motivational people, even Tony Robbins is the same. He's so particular on his morning routine and his workouts to get in that physical state before he goes into that mental state. That's again showing you how these motivational people level up every single day of their life. It's not one time leveling up, like, hey, I'm going to level 5 today and then that's it for the rest of my life. It should be level 5 today, maybe level 6 next month. And you got to keep going with
Yeah.
this leveling up.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. So, we talked about earlier on, one of the things that prevents and stops people from going to that stage, leveling up, progressing to whatever it is that they want to get to, one of the things that stops them is fear. So, what happens when you fully commit wholeheartedly to something? Well, we're going to go through 8 points of what the journey that happens for people as a result of wholeheartedly committing to that process. And there are going to be some challenges, right? There are going to be some confrontations, and you're going to look at yourself in the hallway of mirrors and going, what am I doing or not doing? Where am I committing or not committing? And what effect is that having in my life? So that's really the focus of these next 8 points. So point number 1, when you when you basically commit wholeheartedly, is you're going to have to confront your fears head on, right? So if you're fearing exposure, if you're fearing vulnerability, if you're fearing loss, if you level up, you're going to take these head on straight away. And as a result of that, when you do that, your confidence, for some people, they're going to level up, they're going to step into commitment, they feel better and empowered. But for a lot of people, their confidence is going to drop. And particularly if you're trying something new. So, and I've experienced this most recently where I've entered a new realm in a new area, and when you've been successful, been incredibly successful in one area, you take in another area and all the learnings involved in that, and it sometimes derails you, or you sometimes go, what the hell am I doing in this path? And you mentioned earlier on, very at the start of the podcast, Adam, when you said you feel like you're on the wrong path, and as a result of that, you're going to see that play out. You're going to question yourself. Your confidence, as I said, is going to drop. And that's not going to be helped if people look around and go, hey, Adam, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself. What? Are you sad or upset or whatever? And you do, it will be the case where you'll feel like, am I ever going to feel like that way again? Or why didn't I stay there? Or how come I wasn't happy at that level? It's because you knew there was another dimension that you needed to get to, and you had to go to that process. You had to challenge, let go of the good to go for the great in order to be able to get to that next stage and level. So very, very common scenarios. You're going to have to be confronting the fears head on.
Yeah, definitely. And it's I don't know. It's one of those things that you've got to have a good support structure to combat your fears. And I hate running, but I love it now because when I'm running, my mind is clearing all the fears out. I'm replaying my day. I'm reflective. And I find that being reflective is a great way to attack your fears, because you look at it and you go, all right, well, we did this, but what should I have done instead of that? And then I reflect on it. And next time I'm on the situation, I'm not fearful because I've already pre-thought it. Sometimes you don't think about what's going to happen too much. Like you're like, oh yeah, you might be a bit naive. Oh yeah, what's going to happen? And then all of a sudden you get slapped with a giant bill, and then you've got a fear. Oh crap, this could break me. And then you start living in that mindset.
Mm.
And so then later on in the day, I go for a run and I reflect, all right, how am I going to pay this bill? What should I do next time to counter this bill? And then from that point on, the strategy is every week you save $100, your $100, $100, $100, and then you're combating your fear of a giant bill.
Mm.
You're combating a fear of poverty, because what you're doing is you're putting some savings away every week. You might never have to use them, but you're stopping your mind from thinking about poverty again. And
Mm.
it's a way of being reflective. And I find that best when I'm running, but it's a way of being reflective and you learning your systems and structures to combat it when it comes up in the next phase of your life.
Mm. Yeah, look, and you know, you outlining something really powerful there, and this is what I found when I was talking about my coach initially. When I hired my coach John at that time, he was the most expensive coach in the country,
Mm.
and it was a big stretch to do that. And so I had to lean into that to go, especially when it's different when you're doing it from a place of comfort, right? Where you go, you talked about money. It's different to say, I've got it and here it is and I'll do that. But when you don't have it and you got to trade on faith and you've got to say, I don't know how the hell I'm going to find this, but I know it's the right way forward. So I had to go through a really big stretch. And as a result of that faith in self, of that commitment to do whatever it took, my business tripled within 3 months.
Mm.
Right. And it was because I made a decision to go all in.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you're right. You can break it down into logical steps, but sometimes there's no logic in it. And sometimes it's escaping the parameters and the box of limits that you've put yourself in, and smashing through that is what that step is. And so that's what it was for me. And that was the objective in the process of leaning into that fear, the fear of I don't have enough, the fear of how am I going to find a solution? And the answer I found is you do.
Yeah.
Become resourceful because you have to. And once you're fully in, you're basically totally committed to that process.
Yeah, well, Andy Frisella mentioned on one podcast, he was saying like, you know, they were kicking ass, they were growing and all this stuff in his business. And then he got turned around and he got slapped with a $1 million tax bill. And he was like, what?
Yeah.
You know, we knew we were making money, but we didn't realize we were going to have to give away $1 million to tax.
Yeah.
But he didn't let it define him and cripple him. It wasn't a fear. He turned around and goes, I'm actually blessed to be able to pay $1 million in tax.
Yep.
That means that we're earning so much more. So instead of him letting his fears cripple him, he confronted it. He made the fear not a fear anymore. He was like, no, this is my ownership. This is my spin in my mind. This is what I'm moving forward to. And, you know, it becomes a positive because it means we're earning a hell of a lot more money because that's the tax bill, you know? And that's how you got to flip it in your mind. You can't just let your fears cripple you. You've got to confront it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you're going to, number one, have to confront your fears first on. The second thing that's going to happen is that you're going to feel like a lot of areas of your life and world are falling apart, right? That things are suddenly out of control. And, you know, you talked about Napoleon Hill earlier on about his Think and Grow Rich. The interesting part about that story is that he went through months of depression leading up to that, right? And a switch flicked in his mind and he suddenly had clarity and he went all in and it created this masterpiece that has stood the test of time. But leading up to that, he was in a bad place. You know, he hit rock bottom, his life, finances, relationships, they're all falling apart. So he didn't, you know, when we look back at the body of work he created, we go, that's amazing. You must have had it all the time. He had to make a decision and he had to step into that version of the person that would create Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
So this is a really important part, is it's not going to feel like it's in control. And there's going to be a fear around that for some people who crave control, because, you know, in people who value control totally, you've got to step into uncertainty. You've got to step into lack of control in order to grow and level up. You can't incrementally do this sometimes. Sometimes it's just an exponential leap or a quantum leap that involves going way out of your comfort zone. And that's what so many people who have risked great things have had to get to that place. So it's really fascinating that the guy whose book has now been attributed as being the most successful avenue for helping people gain wealth through history, several months before that was not in a place where he could have even delivered that.
Yeah, yeah. It's an amazing book in goal setting. It's not just for money, but he
Yeah,
talks about a whole other range of things in the book, and I think everyone should read it. Um, but yeah, I did a story on Instagram this week, and it talked about what Jim talks about a lot, which is controlling your controllables.
mm,
You know, as long as you can control your controllables, everything around you will fall apart. It's not
yeah,
if it will fall apart. But if you're controlling your controllables, again, you control the situation. As long as your mind's solid, you know, you're healthy, you can control any situation. You're always going to get curveballs. You're always going to get adversity. But if you don't combat that adversity, you can't level up. You just stay at that
mm,
same level all the time. And you know what? Some people are happy like that, and that's
yeah,
fine. You don't constantly have to be your best version.
mm,
Some people don't want that. That's all well and good. It's not one size fits all. But if you want it, as Jim says, go all in. As ET says, you got to go all in. You can't just sit around half-assing and then turn around and go, how come that guy's got it, but I don't have it?
mm,
You know, you've got to, if you want it, you go all in. You chase that dream.
yeah. And further to this point as well, I was talking to a client this week who's in IT, and in their world, they live in, we've mentioned before, VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, right? They live in an adaptive environment where they cannot possibly have every answer, every solution. They don't know what's going to happen. All they've got is control and self.
Mm.
So the objective, particularly if you're going to consider leveling up, is there's sometimes things are going to feel like they're clumsy and all out of control. And the only thing, as you said in your podcast, is control the controllables. And that sometimes controllable is you,
Yep.
is just staying grounded and centered while there's all hell and a shit show floating around you. Is you surrender to that process, surrender that there are going to be things that are out of your control, but what you ultimately have is control over self. That's
Yeah.
that's the most point of power that you're left with as well.
Yep.
Okay,
100% agree with you.
so point number 3 is, and you touched on this earlier on, you're going to question yourself and your goals, Adam. So as a process of leveling up, you're going to question and say, look, what's this all about? It feels like my whole world's falling apart. Why did I begin this path? What's the purpose? What the hell am I doing? And it's really important during these times that, and we've referred back to 75 hard for us. We just, hand on heart, we get no endorsements or commissions talking about that. It's just a great program, right, to teach people, but it's about your core practices, rituals and routines. So at times where it feels like you're going to become question your goals, like you just said, Adam, control your controllables, focus on those processes. That's going to be important because it's going to be disheartening. You're going to be challenged and you're going to question yourself, but it's so important that you're clear on why you did this and why you started this journey in the first place.
And I believe that, again, this week I've what is it, day 20? It was my third week into the thing, and I've reached, this is my fourth time around. I failed once before, but I've reached a different level of clarity this time around, and I'm sitting there and I'm
Yeah.
just going,
Yeah.
all right, let's laser in. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, you jumped at that, so
I did. I
you
did because
go.
I
Yeah.
can actually see it. I actually
Mm.
see it. You look sharper
Yeah.
the last few weeks, heaps sharper.
Yeah.
Just and that's what it is. It's about sharpening the saw.
Yeah. Well, Andy talks about the axe
Yeah.
analogy, sharpening your axe. You know, you use it all the time. You got to keep going back and sharpening it, and that's what leveling up does. You know, and sometimes you get in a rut, and that's fine. It happens. Um, you know, all sports have off seasons because
Yeah.
you understand you need a bit of downtime. But how long your off season is, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And this past off season for me was a little bit longer, but I don't want to blame anything because excuses sound best to the person who makes them.
Mm.
And, I could blame COVID for as much as I want. I could blame lockdowns. I could blame curfews. But ultimately, it came down to me, and I didn't do what I needed to do. And
Mm.
I identified that and back into 75 hard. And I'm reaching clarity. And clarity means that I don't question myself and my goals anymore because I know what I have to do
Mm.
and I just do it. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's when you're tired and you're fatigued
Yeah.
and you walk in the door and you look at your whiteboard or you look in your diary or you look at your plan or whatever you do and you read what you got to do. You just get up and do it.
Mm.
Don't
Yeah.
question it, just do it. And clarity leads to combating the questioning your goals and yourself.
Yep. Great stuff. So we mentioned point one was you're going to confront your fears head on, right? The second thing that'll happen once you become fully committed is that everything's going to feel like it's falling apart, at least for a time anyway. The third thing that will happen is you're going to start questioning yourself and your goals, right? And the fourth thing that's going to happen, and I know it's happened for me, is that you're going to feel alone for a while, even amongst your close friends, because when you start drawing or pulling in a particular direction, people initially may not understand what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And it's going to create some distance there. And a lot of the times, this is what prevents people from really going to that next level is the fear of loss, fear of how people will perceive that. And people good naturedly may genuinely be concerned where that's at, but sometimes you ascending or leveling up in another area, we've mentioned it before, challenges them about how they do things. And so consequently, that innocent statement is really about self-justification for why they're not leveling up. And it's important to put that in context. They may care about you, they may really love you, it may even be people that are closest to you that are saying this, but sometimes you leveling up threatens how they do things. And so consequently, they'll try and keep you in the safe, in the known, in the same realm so that it doesn't make them feel bad about themselves. Harsh, but true.
Yeah, and I find that it works in both ways. Like when you're leveling up and you see how great it is in your life, you try and push it onto as many of your family and friends as possible because you're like, all right, I've put the work in, but I see the rewards and how good this is. I believe you should do this. And then you tell them and they start for a couple of days and then they quit. And then you're like, oh, actually, I don't want to be alone. Like, and then you start pulling yourself back because you're like,
Mm.
my family and friends aren't doing it. As you've said, like you just start getting comfortable with them because you don't want to leave them. You don't want to leave them behind. You're like, I tried to help. They didn't listen. And I guess this is how it's going to be from now on. And some people just want to be that comfortable person and be around with their family and friends. And that's fine. But if you really want to define yourself, you've got to push, got to level up and go all in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
sorry, and I learned very young in my life. When I say young, young in my adult life, I was talking to a guy who owned a restaurant next door to me, a Greek restaurant, and said to him, "Hey, your friend dropped past yesterday." He goes, "Which one?" And he named 4 people. I go, "Oh no, it wasn't any of them." He goes, "Well, then it's not my friend." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, I've got heaps of acquaintances, but a friend to me is if I'm in jail and I call you, you come with the bail money right now." And he goes, "Unless those guys are in trouble, I'm fine." And I guess what he did was he made his circle so tight and so small that they're all successful and they're all leveling up together. And that's who he surrounded himself. And the rest, he didn't care if he felt alone because he
Mm.
had his good support
Mm.
group around
Mm.
him. So uh, I'm reading like you'll feel alone, and I was very fortunate early in life to go. No, you get your support structures right, and you'll be fine in life.
Mm. Yeah, look, it is. It's important, and the more the more people ascend. Quite often, you'll hear that people hit the big time, and they'll still hang around with people who they knew from childhood
Yeah,
because they knew them before they achieve success, and they know they can trust them. So they've seen them ascend, and it's quite often the case. But quite often, that's what's going to be the case. So when you're following a dream, when you're making a decision to to dent the universe, there are going to be times where you're up earlier, stay up later than everybody else, and you're punching out or grinding when everybody else is sleeping. You're doing things that most people look at and go, why are you doing that? And you will feel loneliness, right? And it's normal for that to be the case. But like you just said, if you can find a group who get you for who you are, you're not going to feel lonely. Yeah. You're not going to feel alone. They're just going to people go, I understand what you're doing, go for it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the confirmation in there. But you will feel that distance. It happens to a lot of people.
It does, yeah, it does happen, and I've had that before. Don't think every time like I come with big energy and like so secure and certain in what I'm saying. Don't think I haven't felt these all before. I have, but I'm trying to learn how to combat them. And what I say is what has combated it for me. So I've got a good support team. Whether or not it's in business, I've got a support team for business. I've got a support team in jiu-jitsu with our our health and nutrition. So I've got that support team, and I've got other support teams as well. And you've just got to build. We talk about different hats, and for different jobs that you do. I've got different support teams for every part of my life, and that helps me level up in different areas, because it's like having a mastermind. You've got different people who have different mindsets, who will tell you something that you're probably missing. And that's, again, another thing about clarity. You might be missing something and getting really frustrated, and then fears coming in, you question yourself. And having a mastermind or a support structure helps you understand your goals from a different point of view and go, actually, it wasn't so bad. And it helps you go. Anyway, I'm probably getting off topic now.
No, that's
I think support structures are good. So that's all.
Okay, cool. So point number 5. So if you choose to level up, point number 5 is you're going to have a lot of opportunities that present themselves as a result of that. But a lot of times they're distractions. Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, says a once in a lifetime opportunity is irrelevant if it's the wrong opportunity. So it's all well and good to go, hey, this is amazing, this is great. But if it's not the right opportunity for you, it's going to take you off track. And this is what happens, so many times when people are energetic, when people are enthused, when people are passionate, people see that and go, hey, this is great. Hey, would you like to be a part of this committee or that movement? And sometimes it's called the curse of the capable, because people are really capable. So you have these opportunities that show up for you, but they're not really your purpose or path. So it's going to be really important that you don't say yes to every one of those opportunities, and you have to develop that level of discernment and get really, really clear that this is humbling. I'm grateful. I'm really honored, but this is not for me. And being comfortable with do that, because the more things you say yes to, the more things you say no to yourself for. And if you're going to level up, you have to be, to a point, single-minded about that objective and focus. And you can't afford to go off track or off purpose with things that people have seen that you'd be a great addition for, but aren't really part of your ultimate objective.
Yeah, I've had this done when I had 4 businesses at one point, and everyone was looking at me, oh, this kid's young, he's successful. Like, this was in my late 20s. And, oh, this kid's young, he's successful. Maybe he wants to collaborate with this, or he wants to do that. So I would get so many business opportunities, and I'm like, sorry, guys, I got 4 myself. I can't drive another 5th, even if it's a half. I can't drive a 6th, because they look at you, go, hey, that guy's successful. Here's an opportunity. And then 9 times out of 10, you're left with the bulk of the work, because they go, oh, you're more experienced in this. You're more experienced in that. You understand this. It's your connection. And then you go, well, do I really need you in this business venture, or is it just me harnessing another avenue? And you do get countless opportunities, but you have to be true to yourself and go, what is best serving yourself at this time? And Jim spoke about it earlier when he was with his spiritual coach, going, you know what, I've got these 4, they all fill my cup. I'm happy to move forward with this. But if he gets probably another opportunity, is that going to throw it all out of whack? And he's got to be strong enough to go, actually, no, the 4's good. I'm happy with this. but I'm not speaking for him. Maybe he's leveling up. Maybe he wrote this because he wants to level up to number 5 in the next few months.
Yeah, there's more there, man. There's
Yeah.
creativity. It's funny. I'm tapping into um, so many opportunities. It's funny because the movie Limitless, right, which we've
Yeah.
spoken about before. I love it. Right, over the last few weeks, I feel like I'm in that zone where I cannot get stuff out fast enough, and a lot of it is because I've let go of the things that were anchors, the things that were not really helping me operate. So I've closed a lot of the windows down that are on my screen and computer and just focusing on the core ones, and that's been really, really helpful for me in that regard. So that's a big part of it. So I've had so many opportunities to go in different directions. Like you said, you just decide, no, this is be the tipping point. I'm not going down that road. This is within my core competencies and directions. I'm going to put all in those areas, but I'm going to have to let those other ones go. So
for everyone at home or listening along, Jim's just bought this awesome setup, his new computer system and all that. And that's probably why he's spitting fire at the moment. He's creating as much content as possible. Everything is super schmick and new.
man,
And
it's
it's just,
it's dual screens. It's like high operating speed, and it is because um, that's what's required. And so as a result of that, it wasn't just the inspiration of the equipment. It was just now that's a tool.
yeah,
That's a tool to be able to create faster, quicker, more efficiently. And we're engaging, even with the podcast, we're engaging and outsourcing and starting to outsource more to ensure that we operate and level up as a podcast even more.
yeah,
So you'll start noticing that as well as we do more and more of that. So that's what it's about. For me, it's like if I'm going to put my energy effort into something, I'm going to give it my all.
yeah,
Otherwise, I'll go and do something else that I'll put my energy and effort in. It's just like I said, I find it really difficult to be half-hearted
yeah,
about it. And to me, that's Grant Cardone writes a book called "Be Obsessed or Be Average," and I found great solace and validation in that book because I've gone, okay, are there elements of my behavior that are obsessive? 100%,
yeah,
right? Um, I can be so single-minded and focused on an outcome to the exclusion of other things. So what I've had to learn is how can I be all in and be aware of what else is going on,
yeah.
as opposed to just tunnel visioning it. So visioning it. So that's been really, really helpful. So
Well, there's a guy called CT Fletcher. I'm not sure if you know him, ex-power lifter,
yeah,
still motivational speaker, but just one word always from him: it's obsession.
yeah.
And that's it. And if you're not obsessed, you're not leading your best
You're
avenue
all
through
in.
that. Yeah,
You're all
exactly. Yeah,
in. You're leveling up.
yeah,
So there's the commonality. Whichever word that you want, whether it's like it doesn't have to be just work. It's like how can you level up as a dad? How can you level up as a father? How can you level up as a partner? That leveling up may mean, hey, I make it more about you than about me. Hey, I make it a priority to spend quality time with you. Those are the kind of things that we're talking about. They're not just applicable to work and business, right? They're applicable to all areas.
yeah,
And nobody wants someone who is, the times that my younger son Xavier um, has called me out is that I think I might have shared it in a very early podcast episode where I was spending time with him, but I was distracted thinking about something else. And he could turn around and go, "Hey, you're either with me or you're not." And that's the that's the environment and family that I have. We have that level of clarity, communication, and honesty. But if someone's like going through the motions, they get called out. They get mauled.
the
So
lion's den.
everybody knows where you stand all the time. So I just find that reassuring. That's going to be confronting and challenging for a lot of people. But to me, I love it because I actually have truth,
Mm.
and I get comfort in that. So let's keep moving on, Adam. So point number 6. So once you make a decision to become fully committed, you're going to be faced with a crucial decision, and that decision quite often will be that you're going to have to question your deeper why. What is it that brought you to this place? Why are you doing what you're doing? And in order to connect with your why, we touched a little bit about it, just over the last, 10, 15 minutes or so, is that you're going to have to uncommit to certain other opportunities and situations that may be distracting you. So you're going to have to perhaps have tough conversations with people or make some tough decisions to let go of things in order for you to keep moving forward and get you back to your core. So at this point, you can take a lot of what you learned in the past, be grateful for it, and make the decision to go bigger than you had before by letting go of the things that have outlived their validity or their purpose. And it's time to let them go.
I'm just trying to look up a quote at the moment, and it just says, it's actually a Les Brown quote. Look at that. It goes, to be successful, you must be willing to do things that others won't do in order to get things tomorrow others won't have.
Yeah.
So basically, that's one of the reasons, that's one of my biggest whys. Why do I do what I do? Is because I want to do what others won't do today to get things that others will never get tomorrow.
Yep.
And that's my biggest why, is because I want to have everything.
Yep.
But I'm willing to put the work in for that.
Yep.
And I know others won't do that, and that's fine. Again, everyone has their own journey in life. This is the journey I've chosen. That's my why. And every time I'm feeling down, I'm questioning myself. I go, why do I have my own business? Why do I do this? And I go, actually, simple. I have it because I want to have the things that others don't have. And that's all it is. And I don't mean that as in headaches. I mean that as in all the rewards and all the spoils. And you're going to go through the shit to get to that next level. And that's just training. It's like when you go to boot camp and, you're crawling under the barbed wire, with a gun in front of you. And you're crawling through the shit, because when you're in real battle, you've done that training. It's not so hard anymore. All right, there might be a couple extra gunfire shooting over your head, but you've practiced for this. So then you become, the next level up. You're a cadet, then you become a private, and you move up that way. It's constantly leveling up, but you've got to go through that next level of boot camp to get to that next ranking in the army. And that's again how it is in business or in life, is constantly leveling up, but you come back to your why, and that leads back to clarity, as I said earlier. And again, my clarity, and that's why I want to share it, is because I want to go, hey, I want things that others will never have.
Yeah. Great distinction. So we're going to move to point 7. Let's do a little recap on the points that will happen once you decide to fully commit. So the first level we said is that you're going to confront your fears head on. The second thing is going to happen is that you're going to think like things are out of control. The third thing is going to happen is you're going to start questioning your reasons for doing what you're doing. The fourth thing is you're going to feel alone quite often because of the path that you've chosen to start. Point number 5 is there's going to be a whole lot of countless opportunities that present themselves, and you've got to have the discipline to get clear that these may be merely distractions and they're actually taking you further away from what you're doing. Point number 6, you're going to be faced with a crucial decision, and you may need to let go of certain things that up until now may have served you. Okay, so point number 7, and this is going to be probably the most confronting one for most people, is that you need to adjust yourself. What got you to here won't necessarily get you to there. And this is the most confronting part that comes up for people, is who do you need to become in order to continue to progress and move forward? So you had to be the person who made the commitment to become fully committed. But what does that involve? What does that look like? How do you change your identity, and how do you reclassify and recalibrate your identity to be a person who now is all in, and what comes with that? So that's the personal growth part of it for a lot of people. That is the most challenging one, but it's the most important part when going forward.
I have a book of that title somewhere, but I can't find it at this time, so I forget the author.
Is that why you were looking back?
Yeah, I've got my books. I got some books up here, but it's not in this. It's in my boxes over there somewhere.
I just thought you were hearing noises and you're just looking around. It's just anybody watching on the video, Adam's just like, he's just showing me the back of his head. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
And you being the ultimate professional just kept talking the whole
Show
way
just
through.
kept going
Yeah.
on.
Just
The show must
yeah,
go on. I just
that's
kept
it.
looking around in there. So, but yeah, look, so many times, what got you here won't get you there. That's the theme. But
Yep.
it's so true. It's the theme that says, okay, things need to change. Things need to evolve.
Yep.
And most importantly, you need to evolve
Yep.
in order to progress and move forward.
Well, there's another quote. I won't bother typing it in because otherwise we would just sitting on dead air. But ET says something, and it goes to be willing at any time to give up what you have now for what you will become.
Yeah.
And again, that's sort of similar along the lines of the Les Brown quote. And one of the examples was your phone. How much time do you spend on your phone every day? Be willing to give that up, even for an hour or two. Put that in a drawer. Do what you need to do for your work, and then you can use it all for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But he used the example of giving up your phone completely and seeing how efficient you could become.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because how many others are willing to do that? But that's also a way to level up and move forward.
Yeah. You know how you use the phone example here? ET has that beautiful quote as well. It says, people will constantly upgrade their phone, but they're not going to upgrade their life themselves. And this is what it's about. It's you, the 2020 version of you has to be upgraded compared to the 1995 one, if you were born at that time, right? For example. But you've got to keep upgrading self in order to do that. And that leads us to point number 8, which is, in the process of recommitting, you're going to have to keep recommitting to that process. Like you said earlier on, Adam, it's not just a one-time thing. You don't just get fit and stay fit. It's the process of recommitting to that every day. And recommitting to your purpose, recommitting to the direction you've started. That's really important. And that's a constant process of continuing.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's when you sent me the notes saying leveling up, that was the first thing that I thought about, is that you've constantly got to do it. You got to do it yourself every few weeks, every few months, every few years, or well, you don't want to do it every few years, but you want to level up as frequently as possible. And if that means reading a new book, you've got 1 month to read this book, you read it, and then implement that over the next month. And in that next month, you're reading a new book, and you could be doing it monthly. Some people do it 6 months, but you set the time limit yourself. You control your life. Again, control your controllables. And if you want to update, Windows, for instance, on a computer, it updates every 2 months. All right, that's a good time frame. Every time your computer updates, you update yourself or something like that. And then you keep moving forward that way. That's how you constantly get better. That's how you constantly grow, move up positions in life. It doesn't have to be in business, just in life in general.
Yeah. And a really good way, particularly in peak performance and goal setting, they talk about a 30-day sprint and a 90-day, a quarterly review. All right. So I know in a lot of our clients, particularly in healthcare, we would do quarterly reviews. We do annual reviews, but a quarterly review. So every 3 months you check the KPIs and the metrics, what's going on, all those kind of things. And that's a really good time for a reset to go, okay, I'm going to level up. But the brain works most efficiently when it's locked in on a 30-day goal. So that's a way of committing self. So you might look at this and say, okay, for the next 30 days, that's what I'm focusing on. That becomes, and this is my objective and goal. These are my disciplines. These are my actions. And put your energy and focus being committed to the achievement of that goal. And it's got to be a goal that, it's really interesting that if you set a goal that's too low or too high, if it's too low, you're going to be bored. You're not really going to give all of yourself. You're not going to be all in. And if it's too overwhelming, it's too hard, you're not going to be all in because you've already convinced yourself it's not going to work. So the goal needs to be where you are and a stretch goal so that you have to be all in. And by virtue of you being all in, that's the only way you're going to be able to achieve it. So that's how we create stretch goals to help people incrementally keep improving. But from a process of reviewing things every quarter at an absolute, ideally, when they go 6 months and 12 months, they're good, but the rolling 12 weeks seems to work a lot better in terms of being able to course correct or make adjustments. So that's a really important process.
Well, if you think about a 12-month goal, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that most of the time with the 12-month goal, most people will go, oh, yeah, cool. And they start, 1 month is good, 2 months is good. Third, fourth, fifth, 6 months starts to slip just a little bit. And then you're like, oh, crap, I've got to push. And then you start pushing for 7, 8, 9 months. And you go, actually, this goal is too far away from me now. And then you just, let go of it. And
Mm.
I've seen it happen many times. I've been a part of that myself. Then Jim told me about the 30 and 90 days. And since I implemented that, it worked so much better because
Mm.
I go, what's the 30 day? What's the 90 day? And I'm more of a reverse engineering type of guy. I'll go, what's the goal? And what are the steps that are going to get me there? So
Yeah.
I'll get the goal and I'll work back. I'll go, all right, well, I want to sell more retail products. So how do I do it? First, develop the product. All right, cool. Next, what do I do? Develop the packaging. All right, cool. Next, what do I do? I start pitching it to retail people, but I'll also launch a website online so that people can buy direct from me. And then what's the next step after that? All right, we'll get to the big boys like the major supermarkets and move out. What's the next step? Go into hampers because you got brand recognition now. And then you work and you go, all right, well, now we've reached the retail sector. And that was the ultimate goal. But I re-engineered it all the way back to how do we get there? First, develop the product.
Mm.
Next is the packaging. And you got these small incremental increases every time. Then you've built a new part of your business. And, we're relating to that because we're a business podcast.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
you constantly have to recommit. Once you got food service and you got retail, what's next?
Yeah.
Exporting. And then
Yeah.
what do you do with exporting? Do you go food service first? Do you go retail? And then you recommit and commit. All right, we did the Asia region. So where do we want to go next? Is it Middle East? Is it the Americas? And you constantly keep growing.
Yeah. Yeah, spot on. So, Adam, we want to make this as practical as possible for people listening. So, we've got some action steps if you so choose to do them to really leverage what we're talking about today. And so, the first action step would be, identify which area of your life you may not be currently fully committing to. It could be your health, it could be your business, it could be your relationships. And then the second action step would be to ask yourself, what's it costing you by not doing that? Are you losing the quality of the relationship? Is your health and fitness suffering? Are you basically going down the spiral of depression as a result of not fully committing to something? There are going to be costs of doing that. There's usually the fear that stops people there, but it's the cost is the part of it that you really want to, when you're trying to create change in behavior, you really got to focus on what effect is that having either on you or the people around you that are important to you, of you continuing doing what you're doing. And action step number 3 is, if you identify the area that you're not committing to and what it's costing you, if you're going to change that today, what are 3 things that you could do that would raise your level of commitment in that area? And just by declaring those and starting them and taking action along those, you'll start shifting the needle towards a better outcome in the direction that you want to go. And the more you do that, the more that becomes a discipline that starts creating change exactly in the direction you want to go. So it actually allows you to gain control and empowers you in the pathway you want to go.
Awesome way to shut out the podcast.
Yeah. So any final comments from you, Adam, with regard to our podcast? This was a lot more content heavy again, and coming back to our roots. Anything you want to leave the listeners with?
Not too much. I just want to say, I encourage everyone to level up. And Jim talked about health and fitness. Obviously, that's his background. So I just wanted to say to everyone, drink more water, get more sunshine, go for a couple more walks, and just be happy. And that'll fill your cup in that avenue, and hopefully that spills over into the next part of your life and intrigues you into going, hey, what's next? Is it excelling in my business? Is it excelling in someone else's business and moving up my position? Is it family? Is it relationships? How do you want to excel? But first, you've got to look after you and level yourself up before you can start looking outwards. So drink some more water, get some exercise in, get some sunshine, be happy, read a couple of books and level yourself up first before you can start looking outwards.
Yeah. And what I'd finish up with as well is really just a summary of the process of leveling up will confront you to you. It will show you all the fears and doubts and uncertainties you've ever felt are going to come up in those critical moments. And the fear that for a lot of people is exposure. The fear that's going to show up for a lot of people is, am I going to leave other people behind? The fear is, I'm going to be by myself. And I get that. What's on the other side of that though is truth for a lot of people, and the highest expression of yourself. And so sometimes what will happen is you don't even know what's on the other side of that, but you owe it to yourself to go for it. You owe it to yourself to be able to use all your talents, all your skills and tools, and express your craft, your message in the highest and best way that you possibly can. Because you're going to touch more people, you're going to influence more people, and potentially have a greater impact and leave a greater legacy if that's what you so choose to do by leveling up. But it has to start with self. It has to start with how you see yourself, how you conduct yourself, and the disciplines and behaviors and thoughts and rituals that you follow through. So it's a necessary process. And once again, as I said, I dedicate it to my coach who helped me level the hell up and saw in me what I wasn't ready to see and held space for me up until the moment that I could see it, feel it, and then own it for myself. So, John, love you dearly. Thank you for everything you've done for my life and world. And I hope that in one short, small way, I'm able to pay that forward to other people who are either listening, who I touch in the same way that you did. So, Adam, I'm done. I'm just going to do our wind up before I lose it. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us on the podcast. It's just a reminder to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and the extended Launch and Beyond community on these channels. Please post any questions or comments you may have about the podcast or anything you'd like support with. We say that so many times, but quite often the thoughts and questions that you have are the same ones that everybody else has. So just by sharing it in that forum creates a discussion point in a community, and it can have such a great impact, much greater than you ever may even realize yourself. If you're enjoying the podcast and finding value in it, we'd be really grateful if you go over to iTunes and leave us a review. This will allow us to reach a larger audience and help more people. So from me, once again, we value and are so thankful for you sticking by us, and it's a bye for me for now.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.